all my life, all I wanted was to be a mom. It's a very bizarre thing being a mother because you know this individual as well as you know yourself, even when they cannot speak to you. And then after he was born, that connection was just like even more intense.
Let's go, man.
I'm ready.
I'm excited.
We're on the road for the first time, guys.
First time on the road, North Carolina. Shout out North Carolina.
Shout out to Durham.
Shout out to our
Durham.
amazing guests on the way right now.
Yes.
Autism Muhammad. Let's
Yes.
go,
Yes.
man. We here.
I am excited, fella.
We here. We here.
All right.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Beyond the Science. I am your host, Jerron Trotman, joined by my fantastic co-hosts, Joseph Adams, Darius Cooper, and we are just excited to be here with a special guest here today. But before we get into that, I just want to remind our audience of our mission and vision at here Beyond the Science, to amplify the voices of diverse individuals within the field of ABA. And we aim to address and dissect the unique challenges, systemic barriers, and cultural nuances that impact various communities. By providing a platform for insightful discussions, expert interviews, and personal narratives, we strive to foster understanding, inspire change, and promote diversity and inclusion within ABA. All right, so we have Joni here, Miss Joni, and she's been making her around. A lot of you guys know her as Autism Mom Life on TikTok. So fellas, let's welcome her to the show.
Thank y'all so much for having me. It's so nice to know that there are others out there that have a similar vision of what the future can hold for our kiddos.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I know you have two sons with autism, and you are also a paramedic.
Yes.
That's all right. So that is actually, you're super excited to know that. That's quite the dynamic there that you have.
Yeah. So we have, my husband and I, we have a blended family. We have 7 children altogether. 2 of our children are on the autism spectrum. Cash, who is 12, his level 3 support, which means he needs very substantial supports. And Cole is level 2, meaning he does need substantial support, but not as much as Cash.
Awesome.
So I wanna ask a question, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes we do just jump into it. So you mentioned that you're in a blended family. So what was that kind of like introducing, a new man to Cash's life, and what was those conversations kind of like?
So, funny enough, Ryan and I, we all went to church together. So my kids have always known Ryan from church. And his children, all of our children played together in the nursery. So we were very fortunate in the fact that it wasn't just, a stranger off the internet or a stranger you meet out and about. This was somebody that we knew and we were familiar with. We fell in love and life happened. And so, but of course, being that we do have challenging behaviors at times, those were conversations that we had to have. I'll never be able to fully express the gratitude I have for him and for them, because, when you have kiddos that have challenges, even, blood-related family has a hard time sometimes with that. So, yeah.
So I want to ask, what was that like for you as far as the thought process of, being with someone on a serious note and them being around Cash, more often? Like, how did you feel about that?
If I'm being very transparent here, it's always nerve-wracking for me. There's an element of anxiety that comes with putting Cash into any type of new environment, and even though, we were familiar with Ryan, so he wasn't like a stranger, but we only saw him twice a week. So some of those anxieties were still there because does he accept my son the way he is, and can he work through this? Because even as his parent, his father and I still have challenging moments, and so that was kind of where we were. It just personally, it gave me anxiety just hoping that he would be able to accept us and love us, and he really has.
That's awesome. So, and I won't stay on this topic too long. So, what advice would you give to, women or even men in regards to bringing someone new into your child's life that has autism and something that may make them feel comfortable in regards to that?
Okay, so my advice would be, as soon as you see that there's a potential for a serious relationship, you need to make sure that you expose them, not necessarily in person to that person, but make videos of you and that person, or so they can hear their voice, pictures of that person, and expose your child to that, and explain to them, even if they're nonverbal or don't have very good expressive communication, you don't, share with them, because really, when a person can't express themselves fully, we're not exactly sure to their level of understanding.
Right. Yep.
So we need to make sure that we are just like you would with a typical child, with like, hey, this is Mr. Ryan and he's mommy's friend and mommy loves him a lot or cares for him, or however else you want to phrase it, your family best. But that's my advice, is early exposure as soon as you feel like this could be a potential long-term thing, and not just you talking about them, pictures, video.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I think that's going to be very insightful and helpful for a lot of people. And that's something that a lot of, men and women go through, of even feeling comfortable. Are they going to accept my child? How are they going to deal with the behaviors? So we definitely appreciate that. So we'll kind of jump into it. I want to highlight a little bit of your viral moment. The one thing that a lot of people say, with Cash appearing to be aggressive, is why don't you get physical? And, we kind of had a conversation before the cameras were rolling about it's a science to it. And I want you to, the way you broke it down was amazing. And I would love for you to actually explain to people why it's not as simple as just to, be physical or to spank them more,
Like for Cash specifically, Cash is a sensory seeker. Meaning, he also has sensory processing disorder. I want to put that out there. And so he is a sensory seeker, meaning he craves really intense sensory input, vestibular input, proprioceptive, I think I said that right, input is really big for Cash. And when he was little, he used to literally just run into the walls, which was wild to see. But to get that input, right? And so when we found out the why behind why is our 2-year-old running into walls? So that tells us, so he has poor spatial relation, meaning he can't feel his body the same way that you and I can. So like if we were all close our eyes and put our arms out, you can have an idea of where your arm is in space. Well, Cash doesn't have that, like a lot of children with autism and sensory processing disorder, they lack that. That's why they require so much sensory input. And with Cash specifically, the reason, back to the Applebee's video, the reason that we don't hit back is because he's a sensory seeker, that can actually, as wild as it may sound, it can actually positively reinforce that bad behavior.
Wow.
So by spanking him, and I get those comments a lot, well, I just hit him back or not. By doing that, you're actually giving him something that he needs, not just wants, something that he needs, and that can, in turn, positively enforce that poor behavior.
Yes, and I just want to jump in really fast here, because when I saw that video, first of all, I thought you handled it just beautifully. The way that you then tried to get him to communicate more effectively his wants and needs. I think it's one thing to be able to say it, but to be in there in real time and be able to have that response, I think that's just absolutely amazing. And just modeling it for the community. I want to shift gears here a little bit. And you spoke about the challenges of having a blended family. Could you just talk to our audience more about just your journey as a mother with 2 kids with autism? Can you just speak to us about just what that journey has been like for you, what it means to you?
All my life, all I wanted was to be a mom. And as a little girl, if you were to ask me how many children I wanted, I would have told you 12. And people thought I was crazy, or, oh, she doesn't know. And truly, I didn't. But I so remember being pregnant with Cash and the vision I had for his life and me as a mother. And it's a very interesting, it's a very bizarre thing being a mother, because you know this individual as well as you know yourself, even when they cannot speak to you. And I remember telling my mama that when I was pregnant with Cash. I was probably 7-8 months pregnant with Cash. And I was listening to something, or I had eaten something, and I was like, he does not like this. Whatever it was. And I was like, Mama, how do I know what he doesn't like or what he does like? But it's just something I don't have any words for, I can't describe. And then after he was born, that connection was just like even more intense. And it still carries on today. Knowing your children, and I was blessed to give birth to 4 and have that amazing experience. And then being a blended family, I have 3 bonus kids. So that is an immense blessing as well. And it's so wild too, because some of these intuitions came along with them also. Like certain things with our oldest daughter, things that she's gone through and stuff. And I'm like, how did I know this? How did I know this about her when I wasn't, like, I'm not her biological mom.
Yeah.
But anyway, so being a mother changed me.
So I want you to touch on a little bit of Cash's and Cult's. I know people may not be as familiar with Cult, but their journey as far as, when you first found out that they had autism, what those emotions were kind of like, and then I want to touch on getting services.
As far as Cash goes, so I was very naive. Probably 3 or 4 months prior to Cash getting diagnosed, I had a patient of mine who was autistic, and they had gotten into a car accident. And so I thought he was just going to be like wicked smart and be like 566 toothpicks on the floor kind of deal. That was my experience. Like, for real.
Right, we don't know.
Right. And he's telling me about he did tell me how many spots his dog name, I think his name was Hugo. Or it wasn't Hercules, it was Hugo or something. And he was a brown and white dog, and he had a very specific number of spots. And the way his nose was shaped. And he told me all about all of the dogs. And all kinds of other dogs. And that is really what we talked about. And that really opened my eyes. Yeah. And at that time, I only knew one individual whose child was autistic. And I remember she and I would have conversations, and she's like, he spilled Coke for the first time to let his teacher know he was thirsty. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. But at that moment, if you would have asked me, did I realize what a big deal that was? No, but I know now.
Yeah.
As far as the boys getting diagnosed and how we came about that. So again, like I said, I was very naive. Cash was my first child. I had been around a whole lot. And so we knew he was quirky. We knew he was particular and unique because, and me and his dad used to talk about this all the time, because he would just randomly bust out into laughter, or he'd randomly bust out into tears. And he didn't have good eye contact. And I did not know this at the time, but he did not crawl forward, he only crawled backward. I found out later that can be a sign of autism. We had to protect the dryer because he would chew on dryer lint. And the medical side of me is like, okay, so he's a bipolar OCD 2-year-old with pica, the little disease, the condition where you have to eat like certain minerals or whatever. And I was like, okay, of course. Looking back now, that none of that makes sense. Like, he's 2, you know.
Right.
And he was even 2 at this point. My family are the ones who, when he was 17 months old, my daddy, he came to me, and he was like the spokesperson for the family in this situation. And he came and he was like, look, I think Cash is autistic. And my daddy, he grew up like back in the day. He was born in 1941. He couldn't read or write. And in my naivety again, I thought, well, how does Daddy know what autism is? If I don't know what autism is. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's the older generation. Like, how does Daddy know? And I remember being on the phone with the people with the CDSA, which is where the people who came and did Cash's initial evaluations. Mm-hmm. And I was on the phone with them, and my mama was driving, and she's like, tell him he does not do good eye contact. And I was like, Mama, I'm on the phone. Like, yeah. And looking back, I so wish I would have just been like, okay, yeah. And of course I told him because my mama told me to, but in that moment I remember thinking, why is that so important?
Yes.
Because that was the level of my naivety. I just did not know. And so those were the things that we noticed with Cash, lining things up. And everything, even from as far back as I can remember, everything was rainbow colored. And so, of course, we come to, like, literally the day before he got diagnosed. And his dad, at this point, was still very much in denial. And he's like, no, he doesn't need an evaluation. He did not know at that time that I had already got everything set up. And they were coming the next day. Mm-hmm. And we were folding clothes. And I told him, I said, you know what? I've told you all the reasons why I think Cash is autistic. Tell me, why do you think he's not? And he couldn't. And he's like, well, it's okay if he is, you know, he'll grow out of it. And I said, no, this is not something either one of us understand. This is not something we're going to grow out of. Yes. We need help for him. They came the next day, and of course, yes. And he was diagnosed that day. And I told our evaluator, or the psychologist that came, I told him, I said, I'm sure there are times where you get parents with tears. I said, but you have no idea what a relief this is for us. So because we knew something was different, but we did not have a name for it. So to finally have a name to where we can make a plan. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
And then with Colt, Colt has always been more verbal. Like typical kid up until about 13 months old, and literally overnight he started rocking, humming, and stopped sleeping through the night. And I told my mama, this was in July of 2016, I was pregnant with our daughter, and I told my mama, I was like, Colt's autistic. And she's like, oh no, it's probably just a phase. And this was like after a week of him doing this automatic change in behavior. And Mom was like, no, it's probably just a phase. And I said, well, if it's still going on after 6 weeks, then this is definitely not a phase. And of course, it was not a phase. I requested for him to be tested that following January, so he was 1.5 years old. But he was just barely missed the mark. So they did not want to label him, especially with an older sibling that has autism. They're like, because he could be mimicking. And even though I tried to explain to him, I was like, I said, these are completely different behaviors. Like he's autistic also. Not as severe as Cash, but he is also. And so we wound up waiting another year because the speech and language pathologist, she said, well, you just wait. He'll have a word explosion. If he does not have a word explosion within the next 12 months, bring him back. We'll reevaluate. Mm-hmm. And so he was delayed in his diagnosis and interventions. But once he received interventions, he's really done well.
I see the tears. I see the emotion. Could you, for our listeners, quickly speak to? I have a lot of parents all the time who have newly diagnosed kids, and they go through a process. It's almost like almost like a grieving process, and you said it was a relief for you. Could you speak quickly to our listeners about just any advice you would give to parents out there who are, just receiving that diagnosis? What would you tell them if they're just like receiving that diagnosis? What would you be able to speak to them for those parents that are out there right now?
It's not going to be easy. You're going to have days to where you just survive, but you will make it through. And as long as they have you, they will be okay.
Guys, do we need to take 5?
Yeah, take 5.
It's so funny. I did an episode about grieving on my own podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay. And for our audience, fast forward 12 years, how hard is it to find capable service, capable therapists, and school services for Cash?
Grasping at straws, and we still don't have those things in place. I'm having to be his mom and his therapist with what little parent training I have had in the past and what I do research myself. And so at this point, it really feels impossible. It's hard to get other services as well because even like with speech, a lot of therapists are afraid to work with Cash because of his tendencies of aggression.
And I also want to touch on the school system,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because the school system, Cash is probably going into 7th grade if he's not in 7th grade right now.
8th.
He's in 8th grade, so the school system should be putting together a transition plan for him. So I want to touch on the school system and what is the school doing to assist with these behaviors or to assist with academic potential and potentially where Cash may add to assist just with life.
So our experience within the school system itself has been a very rocky one. It started out really beautiful. We had 3 years of a self-contained preschool class, and then we went into kindergarten, and it feels like it's been a downhill slope from there. In our experience, they're not trained how to deal with really aggressive behaviors because we've had a BIP since, which is a behavior intervention plan, and we've had one of those since kindergarten, and every one of them says hitting and screaming. And when he was smaller, they could manage him a little bit better. He's always been big for his size, but once he got to be bigger, they would just call us. And so when he was in 4th grade, this was in January, it was the end of his 4th grade year in January 28th of 2021, he had an incident with his teacher that led to an emergency IEP meeting that day. And we did homebound placement that day.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, what that led to was packets. And for all of us parents who lived through COVID and packets and virtual learning, especially with your autistic kiddos, that's not really great for them. And that's what we were sent back to.
Can you just touch on what it was like being a parent with a child with autism during COVID quickly?
The area we live in is very rural. Like, it's way out in the country. The land we live on is a 120-acre farm. So, like, we went to the hog houses. My father-in-law has hog houses, so we'd ride the four-wheeler. So I cannot imagine had we lived in an apartment building or something like that. Like, my heart goes out for all of those individuals. We were very blessed not to experience that aspect of COVID. We didn't feel any really more isolated than what we were with the regard, except for going out to eat.
Okay, cool. So, being that we have companies, Excellence Noir, ABA, and then
Adams Behavior Consulting.
Yeah. I want to, both of you guys, as BCBAs, like, what are some techniques or advice you would give for a parent, parents that are dealing with essentially what she's dealing with as far as the aggressive behavior, as far as schools not wanting to deal with it, as far as things going on in the house kind of thing?
Parents oftentimes don't know their rights in the schools. What they're able to get access to. There's actually a book. It's called Know Your Special Education Rights.
Yes.
I recommend it to all my parents to read because there's certain things that parents don't know that they can get access to. Things like IEs, second opinions, specific things that need to be in that education plan that they don't know. So being able to educate yourself, we talked about advocates as well. I think that's all important. And that's why we're doing stuff like this, to be able to have that reach and disseminate that information. The information is out there. And then your other question was about behaviors?
Yes. So what are some advice you would give, strategies you would give in regards to behaviors and stuff?
Yeah, one thing that we were kind of talking about this off camera is, we like to talk a lot about reactive strategies and what we should do when behavior happens. And, where I've been finding a lot of, and there's a place in the conversation for that. But really being preventative and really looking at those prevention strategies to prevent behaviors from happening. We want to teach replacement behaviors, we want to teach those, but how can we prevent behaviors that happen, and how can we teach functional communication?
Mhm.
We all know that behavior is communication.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So being able to understand why is that behavior happening, how can we prevent that, how can we teach those what we call functionally equivalent replacement behaviors?
Ooh, FERB.
Yeah, so really learn about that. That would be my advice.
That's a new word for me.
Yeah, we call them verbs.
What about you, Joe?
Knowing that hospital homebound situation, that emergency IEP, knowing what you could have done. You could have postponed the meeting. You could have gotten an advocate. You could have really kind of discussed what led to it and made them take more data. Because schools are not supposed to just come in and make an emergency decision. It's supposed to be a data-based decision, right? That typically takes 4 to 9 weeks, because that's typically a semester or half a semester length. And then, like our awesome host said, those teaching those FERBs, but dealing in the world of antecedents. Like, how proactive can I be? Like how you were saying when you were coming off camera, when you were driving here, like, oh man, if we pass by an airport, I'm gonna have to do this.
Yes.
If we pass by this restaurant, I'm gonna have to do this. So knowing that, and then for the most part, as a kid ages, it is assent over authority. So you want the kids' buy-in. So you want a pair. Like, kids change, and Cash is 12, so he's going through a lot of body changes, right? So you can't just go and tell Cash, hey, you must do this and do this way. Because Cash is a big guy. He's 6'1", 245 pounds. So continually pairing, continually finding out what's reinforcing. Those preference assessments, all those little things that you can do on a day-to-day basis. Because today it might be hot dogs instead of pizza.
Yes.
All right. So, knowing that, hey, well, if he wants pizza, then, hey, Cash will do X, Y, and Z, and then you'll be able to get pizza.
Yeah.
Simple pre-med principle.
I want to shift gears here to talk a little bit about parenting and behavior management. You spoke about, and I don't remember this on air or off air, but you spoke about, we spoke about spanking, right, with Cash.
Yeah.
And, you spoke about how for him, even providing that may be reinforcing for him due to his sensory needs. I just want you to speak to our listeners about, how parenting has changed for you, particularly after you got the diagnosis and things like that. How has it changed your perspective? And just talk a little bit about that.
The vision I had of myself was like Medea. Little girl, stop smacking at that gum. Right? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what I saw of myself. Like, reaching across the back seat, flap, or spatula, whatever. And a lot of corporal punishment.
Yeah.
I'm raised in the South, that's part of our life here. So that was what I envisioned for myself. I would have never dreamed that I would be a person that would be like, maybe spanking isn't the best option. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because the way I was raised is, spanking is a good option. Because if it hurts, you don't want to do that again because you don't want that pain from the spanking again.
Yeah.
I never dreamed that there would be an alternative to that. And now actually seeing, because now that has crossed over not just with Cash, but my other children as well. And so now, instead of being reactive in that moment and yelling, and now not saying I'll ever lose my temper, I'm human, but like with my little girl, instead of popping her in the mouth for being sassy, I say, okay, let's take a break. And when we're both calm and regulated ourselves, we come back and we have a conversation. Okay, so why? What made you think that this was okay? Why did you say this to mommy? Or why did you do X, fill in the blank? And what I've learned in that parenting is that helps so much more. And it concretes my relationship with them and the trust between us more. And that's my experience.
Something that we, hear every day in the field is that he doesn't do that with me.
Yes.
That's what Dad said.
And we do know that. We hear that all the time.
Yeah.
We do know that it is a thing sometimes, especially males sometimes they do take a different to that male authority, right?
Yeah.
We do know that even from dad, uncle, brother, stepdad,
Yeah.
you know, just a male presence, they do act differently. But how has it been with you and dad in regards to parenting?
So in regards to parenting, our parenting styles are very different, and they always have been. We are not the best communicators to each other ourselves.
Being honest.
Yes.
Yeah, things are not the same across both households, and that presents a big challenge.
Yes.
A really big challenge because, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the term generalization where it's everything is the same no matter where the kid is? Is that a term? Or
That's the goal.
Yeah,
That's the goal.
That's the goal.
But
Okay, that's the goal. Okay.
Behavior contrast, guys.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Consistency.
So that's always what I hear.
Yeah.
However, I know that some of these maladaptive behaviors happen there.
Yes.
Now, how they're dealt with there, I'm not sure of, because we, you know, I don't know what happens at his house anymore. I don't live there.
Yeah.
But I do hear that oh, he doesn't do this with me.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm like, I know that he does.
Mhm.
Okay, so let me ask, because I feel like that's probably something almost all parents who maybe co-parent with a child with autism may be dealing with. Do you think that if you guys put more effort into your communication,
Mhm.
things would be better across the board? Because I think the main thing is consistency.
Yeah.
You can't work on even ABA or do certain stuff where you get in structure and then you go to dad's house and you're up till 3 a.m. eating hot Cheetos playing Xbox.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, so do you think that's a little bit on your end too?
I think that's a very good description of what I think happens is you have essentially more structure. Not saying there's no structure in the other home, but it's different structure. It's a different schedule. And I really feel like if we could, especially like over summer break, the kids, they're with me for a week and they're with him for a week. If we could figure out a way to have a very similar schedule across both households,
Yeah.
I think, and I had even posed the question to Ryan about why don't we just on the weekends, now that we're back, school's getting ready to start next week. So why don't we this sounds crazy, but just we leave our house for the weekend. That way everything's the same.
Mm-hmm.
Location's the same. And his dad come there. But now, of course, that nobody's really on board with that idea.
I don't know. You tried. I don't know.
I tried.
All right.
No, I hear that. So I guess my follow-up question with that, I appreciate you sharing and being vulnerable here. What support systems and resources have been the best for you guys overall right now in your personal journey?
When we're having a hard time with cash and we need the other children to go somewhere, they can go to his sister's or they may go to his mom and dad's house, or my mom may come. I actually call my mom the cash whisperer. She's better with cash even than me. She really is. And so family, we could not do this without them.
If you don't have that, how much different your life would be? Because I've got parents who are single mothers who don't have family. They don't have support. How much different would your life be?
You know, everybody around us works. I'm a stay-at-home mom, but I'm the only one that has that benefit. And so even though I do have this support, sometimes 9 to 5, I don't, you know what I'm saying? And so essentially, and for those of you out there that are in that boat, you are not alone. And so I remember that's really why I started sharing our live on TikTok, because I remember feeling so alone that day. I was like, I can't be the only one facing this. I cannot be the only one. Now, did I ever think it would resonate with so many people? No, I didn't see that one coming. But I feel like it has opened up conversations that were very much needed. And so my goal now is to create that community.
Yes.
So if you are alone and you're watching this and you're like, man, I need somebody, go to autism_mom_life on TikTok. I do lives multiple times a week. And I try to create that sense of community so that we don't do this alone.
It's amazing. And I want to ask just off of that, how has life changed since stepping into the spotlight, since the million of views on TikTok, since the positive, negative comments?
Yes.
How has that experience been?
Really transparent. It has opened my eyes to people's true feelings and how they really see us, both positive and negative. I have developed some real life friendships from this experience of other moms who are going through this very similar journey. And it's also, I'm the type of person who, like, if you and I don't get along, that's okay. Like, everybody don't have to get along.
Right.
We can all be civil and not like each other. You know what I'm saying? Like, but if you pretend to like me, and then when I walk around the corner and you have something to say, I'd rather you just say it. You know what I mean? And so it has opened that for me. And I have, it's opened my eyes to, it's just been really eye-opening. I'll say that.
So what is that like, when you are, essentially just a mom, with a child with autism, then overnight you have, I don't know how long it took, but let's say a week, but life kind of changes so drastically where now millions of people are giving their opinions. What was that emotion like?
The Lord has blessed me with a very thick skin. The comments are hurtful. I never thought I would have to filter some words that I have had to put in the little filter box so that they don't come through. The people's opinions of the desire to hurt us bothers me, like, to an undescribable degree. But at the same time, I don't feel like I should give those people enough power to shut down my big picture goal and share this type of life with the world.
You are really just sharing some amazing information here. I hope all our listeners you are listening to Beyond the Science, guys. We are going beyond the science of ABA here and really talking about some of the behind the scenes, really talking about the raw emotions and the reality of this space. I appreciate you taking that time.
Ms. Joni and other parents live this 24 hours a day. As practitioners, as people that work in the field, we cannot complain about 8 to 10 hours a day of doing this. We have to do a better job. And that just leads me into this. Your future goals to give back, to help potential RBT coming up here pretty soon. BCBA down the line, which is amazing. Talk to us a little bit about that.
For a lot of us who are kind of new to this ABA thing, and I feel like understanding the purpose of behavior and the functions of behavior is immeasurable. And to be able to give that to others and share this knowledge, I think it's necessary.
Okay. And I want to add one thing part of that too. And not even, just for the plug, but that's something that we are passionate about with our company's Excellence Noir, ABA, Adams Behavior Consultant, is that if we was out here, Cash would be one of us. Like tomorrow, we would have said, "Hey, send us this. We got to come in ourselves." I think there is a thing, right, where companies are saying, "Well, I could send a therapist there to deal with Cash, or I could send them to deal with a 3-year-old."
Yes.
And it's like, no, but Cash needs help too, as much as.
When you get your BCBA, talk to us about your client profile. Like, who would you help?
That's a good question.
That's a good question. The honest answer too. Would you take Cash?
Yes, absolutely.
I love that.
Okay.
That would be I've been the parent. I am the parent who is in such a struggle to find somebody to come work with my child, that I feel like that would be my first goal is to reach out and look for the parents who have essentially lost hope.
We truly give back, and we truly like to see. We could easily open up a clinic, have 35 kids in there that are ages 2 to 5, but we are looking for something that's special. We're looking for something that's unique. We're looking to help bridge the gap for those teenage boys and teenage girls coming soon as they kind of move into adulthood. And I do think that is not a clinical focus because that's just frankly where the money's not. So it is a passion project of ours, but it is the reason in those dark moments, in those sleepless nights, when you're trying to get your BCBA, remember the kiddos that you will help like cash.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We want to dive into knowing a little bit more about you.
Okay.
And Coop, I know you had the question about
Yes.
everything that you wanted to ask her.
I know we're about to jump into, we got some stuff to do.
I'm here.
I want you to tell us your craziest night as a paramedic.
Oh, yes. Gunshot wound to the belly.
Ooh, okay.
Point blank gunshot wound to the belly.
Wow.
I held this boy's intestines in my hands, and it was the most awesome. That sounds wild. Sorry. I should have prefaced with I'm a trauma junkie.
Okay.
I own it. I accept it. That's how I identify. I am a trauma junkie. People are going to get hurt, and I want to be here for it. So and help them. But this young man, he was shot point blank in the belly, and so he had this little bubble of intestines like right there. But then he had 2 handfuls of intestines out of his back because the exit wound is a lot larger, of course, than the entrance wound. And that is when you don't learn that out of a textbook, and they don't train you for that at school. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, okay, intestines have to stay wet. So we just poured some water on there, and wrapped him up, and shipped him off. And I hope and pray that he's okay.
No,
I have to say I was not expecting that.
Right?
I like it.
I love it. I don't know.
That's what everybody expects. Like, I went in this car wreck.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
I've got parents with teenage boys, and they have a lot of embarrassing social moments where they're afraid of. Can you give us one moment where you might have been in public and maybe Cash did something that was kind of breaking a little social norms here?
We deal with a lot of wanting to remove articles of clothing, and that's not socially appropriate.
Yes.
Touching certain areas of our body in public, and so
what areas might those be?
His private areas. Yeah. He adjusts himself, or he'll scratch his hiney, like hand in the pants, scratching his hiney, and I'm like, dude, no, we cannot do that in food line. That's not cool. And that's literally what I tell him. I'm like, no, that's not okay. We have to go wash your hands. It's not okay to just take your shirt off in the middle of Walmart. We cannot do that. That's not okay. And even with Cash, I try to teach the children, that's your body, is to be respected. Nobody should see your body out in public. So that type of thing, that's what we struggle with.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Awesome. So this has been great.
Mm-hmm.
This has been great. We've laughed, we've cried a little bit here. We've talked about the viral moment, the social media. We've talked about the advocacy, the mandating. We've gone into just being a mom of 2 individuals with autism, and you provided some amazing advice for our listeners. I just want to give the floor to you. First of all, twofold question. I want you to let our listeners know where they can find you, where they can, whether it's TikTok, Instagram, wherever. That's the first part of the question. And then just any final thoughts, anything messages that you want to convey to our listeners, could be to anybody, but just any final thoughts that you have.
First off, you can find me on TikTok. I'm autism_mom_life. Also on YouTube, autism_mom_life. Instagram is autism_mom_life 1115.
There you go.
I'm on Facebook as Joni Ryan, Autism Mom Life 2 TEW. I'm on all over social media. I also have a podcast of my own, so please check me out on Amazon Music, Apple, Spotify. It's Autism Mom Life, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because I get asked about my name And why do I share the ugly? So the reason I share it is because it does happen. And I feel like, you know, everything is not always unicorns, glitter, and rainbows. And if that's all you ever show, then how can you help the people who are living the ugly?
Yeah.
And so that's my goal.
Yeah, we really appreciate that. I think that's one thing that we really value here in the space that we've created on Beyond the Science is just those vulnerable, open conversations. You know, when we first connected on social media, you know, and even to our meetings pre-show, you've been just completely open with us, like an open book, and we really appreciate that. Before we get out of here, I just want to open the floor to my co-hosts. Is there anything else you guys want to ask Joni while we have her here today?
We appreciate the perspective. I know a lot of people are going to be able to resonate, and you know, it's definitely going to be a powerful episode. And just, you know, thank you very much.
I think that's something that since you live it, and it's 24 hours a day, and even though we're practitioners, again, like I said earlier, we don't live it, but we're in it. We don't get the full totality and perspective.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
We are hoping to jump on your podcast, so we would love to join you. So you
yes.
can ask us all the questions.
Yay, we're gonna have fun.
Yeah, while we're here in North Carolina. To our listeners, thank you for joining us. You know, as always, guys, give us any feedback in the comments, and we appreciate it. So until then, guys, we appreciate it.